Hey everybody, I wanted to check in and talk through a couple of updates, particularly your first official assignment, which is your creative assignment. It's where you're going to be writing your own creation and destruction myths. That is soon approaching. It will be due next Saturday, so a week from tomorrow, which is February 9th, and I want to talk through that assignment in a little bit more detail. Before I do, I wanted to just mention your discussion forum posts. I am going to be not individually grading your forum posts, but what I do is typically check in with you twice during the semester to give you some pointed feedback on your discussion forum posts. I think this semester I'm going to try to actually come down to campus and meet people individually, do some like mini conferences. If you're not on campus, we can schedule some like Skype time to talk like in person so that I can give you some specific feedback on your post to help you maximize that grade. And if all else fails, I will email you specific comments so that you have them and can use them throughout the course of the semester. I usually do this like before the midterm papers due, and then typically before like a couple weeks before the end of the semester, just so that you are getting some personal feedback from me and can maximize your score in that way. I think so far the posts have actually been pretty strong. And the discussion, I think, has been relatively rich based on the readings that we've done so far. Just to highlight a couple of points, and I did provide you with, two examples to use, especially for your initial forum posts, as kind of guides or models. But clearly, you want to be reading through all of the posts of your fellow classmates before you actually respond with your own initial forum, especially if you're one of those people who tend to post towards the end of our discussion time. Um, Reading through everyone's comments will give you a fuller scope of the conversation, what ground we've already covered. This will help you guard against repetition. It makes no sense for everyone to be saying, I really like this part of the story. Well, I like the same part of the story. I like the same part of the story too. That doesn't help us to really sort of, expand our collective knowledge and understanding of the readings themselves. So reading in advance will help guard against repetition. It'll also cue you into what questions we haven't covered yet. If you feel like we've kind of saturated, we have a saturated response to question 2 and 1. Maybe you want to look towards, the latter questions so that we can really kind of cover as much ground as possible and broaden the scope of our discussion. Um, Strong initial posts will obviously answer a question specifically and will really draw from the text by using quotes in order to ground your points and ground your ideas about these specific texts. So you want to make sure that you are doing that in all of your initial posts, and certainly you can do that as well in your secondary posts too. And I really like that you're engaging with one another directly. And like, I see this point and I agree with you about this, but I disagree with you about that, and here's why. This is a really vital aspect to discussing um, literature in any capacity and any pieces of writing, is to really be able to engage in a critical debate and a critical conversation about these pieces, which I think on the whole everyone has been doing thus far. And that will only get, more fine tuned as you get to know each other's writing and get to know each other's readings of these pieces. We'll see our conversations develop even more as the semester goes along. So generally, I think your discussion forum posts are on target. Make sure you are actually supporting your ideas by utilizing the text and providing some specific quotes. This is also really good practice for your short writing assignments and also your midterm and final papers. It's great to go back through these discussion forum posts when you're trying to generate ideas for those particular papers, so that you can, kind of recall what you wrote, look back on the quotes that you pulled in to help support your points. It'll be good. It's good sort of to have that specific reference to go back to. Okay, So that's on the discussion forum post. From now until Sunday night at 10 p.m., we're going to be continuing our reading of our creation myths. We're going to be looking at a creation myth from India, from the Aztec culture, and also from the Greeks, which tends to be a fan favorite. So we'll be continuing our reading and our discussion on those pieces, and then next week we will start reading some of our destruction myths. This will give you kind of a good grounding for thinking through how you want to compose your own creation and destruction myths. Okay, so we'll have our um, current discussion forum, which will run through Sunday evening at 10 p.m., and then our next discussion forum on our destruction myths will start on Monday and will run through Wednesday evening. And then instead of doing another set of readings for the rest of the week, you're going to be working on writing your creation and destruction myths. So if you go under the assignments tab, you will see specific instructions for these myths that I just want to highlight a little bit to you so you have a sort of broader idea of what you're supposed to be doing. Firstly, there's some questions that you should ask yourself when you're composing these myths, and they center around a lot of the things that we've been discussing. Firstly, who actually created the universe in your particular myth? Is it one God, like we're seeing in Genesis? Is your idea based on polytheism? If so, who are the gods at play? What's the hierarchy? What types of powers do each god yield or goddess yield? So these are some of the things that you want to start talking about. What existed before the universe was created? Was it just a dark void? Was there some other structure or essence that existed beforehand? How were humans created? From what? Were they created at the same time? Or was there a different sort of order to their creation? What was the order that the universe came into existence in? Was it first the lands, then the heavens, then animals, plants, etc.? What is the order of, what order do you think everything came into existence? Then you want to think through, what crime or violation occurred in the universe that created the need for a destruction. And this is really intended for you to be as serious or as scientific or as silly and fantastical and ridiculous as you want to be. But this sort of structure in terms of answering these specific questions, should be in play since we are reading through different variations of creation and destruction myths. And these questions seem to be sort of fundamental to all of them. And then you can think about how you want to compose your myths stylistically. Obviously, we know because myths were passed down orally that repetition is often very important, brevity is often very important. Do you want to write in a more poetic style? Do you want to be more scientific? Do you want to employ a different narrative perspective? You really have sort of free reign to do whatever you want to do. You just have to sort of decide on one type of stylistic approach. These myths, because myths tend to be brief in nature, should be between 1.5 pages and 3 pages. Okay, so you're going to compose your myths. You're going to upload them as Word attachments under the assignments link by Saturday at 5 p.m., next Saturday, the 9th at 5 p.m. And then on Sunday, I'm going to have a forum open specifically on our creation destruction myths, and you are going to provide either, a couple of paragraphs describing your myth and sort of your thought process on answering some of these fundamental questions about how to structure these myths. You could provide us with a sort of sample of your myth. If you want to include an excerpt, you can do that. If you don't want to write and you want to make an upload a video for all of us to watch, sort of talking through your myth or performing parts of your myth. You can get your roommates involved. You could stage a whole production. I'm into it. Um, Whatever you want to do, that actually gives us all a sense of, what your myth was about and how you sort of dealt with some of these fundamental questions about the creation and destruction aspects of it is open, okay, to your imaginations. Don't stress too much about this. Some people are just like, I'm not creative. I don't know. This gives me anxiety. It's not meant to give you anxiety. It's meant to allow you to exercise a different part of your brain and to really be sort of more open minded and creative. And you don't get too many opportunities to do that in academia. So, this is a fun way to do that while also trying to kind of take stock of and process through some of the myths and some of the traditions that we are going to be reading in the next week and a half. So that is all for now. If you have any specific questions about this particular assignment or any of the readings, you can always feel free to email me or raise a question in our discussion forums. If you would like feedback on your discussion forum posts sooner than when I tend to do it, which is usually like before the midterm paper is due, you can always shoot me an email at any time and I will personally respond and give you a little bit of feedback and maybe a couple of suggestions on how to improve the quality of both your initial and secondary posts in our forums. Okay, stay warm and happy weekends, and looking forward to chatting in our next discussion forum due on Sunday night. Bye.